Have you ever thought about what it would be like to see a miracle with your own eyes? I mean, a real, undeniable, history-changing miracle. Now imagine being part of a whole generation that saw them day after day. And then, right at the finish line, they just faltered. Today, we're diving into an incredible story from the book of Numbers. It's a powerful story about one tragic choice, a choice between fear and faith that had consequences that lasted for 40 years.
Okay, so to really get the weight of what's about to happen, we have to rewind a bit. We need to understand God's incredible, almost unbelievable patience and love for Israel up to this point. I mean, think about it. He had already proven who he was over and over again. He freed them from slavery with 10 plagues that brought a superpower to its knees. He literally split the Red Sea so they could walk through on dry land. He guided them personally with a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. When they were thirsty in a desert, he gave them water from a rock. When they were hungry, he rained down food from heaven. And this is so important. Every time they complained, every time they rebelled, his response had consistently been patience and forgiveness. He just kept showing them mercy.
So after all of that, they finally make it. They arrive at a place called Kadesh-Barnea. They are literally standing on the doorstep of the land God had promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is it, the moment of triumph. But instead of marching forward full of faith, they hesitate. They come to Moses and say, hey, before we go in, maybe we should send some guys to scout it out first. They wanted to see for themselves what God had already told them was theirs.
So Moses agrees, and the mission is set. He picks 12 men, one leader from each of Israel's tribes. And among them are two guys you're going to want to remember, Caleb and Joshua. Their objective was simple. Go check out the land, the people, the cities, everything. And they were gone for 40 days.
When the 12 spies get back, they've got proof. They are carrying a cluster of grapes so huge it takes 2 men to carry it on a pole. They confirm it for everyone. The land is amazing. It truly flows with milk and honey. Everything God had promised them about the land, it was all true. But then the report takes a really dark turn.
And this is where everything splits into 2 different realities. 10 of the spies, they focus on the problems. They say, yeah, the land is great, but the people there are giants. The cities are like fortresses. There's no way, we can't attack them. They're way stronger than us. They even said, we felt like grasshoppers next to them, and that's what they thought of us too. But Caleb and Joshua, they saw the exact same things, but through a totally different lens, the lens of faith. They said, the land is fantastic. The Lord is with us. Don't be afraid of them. They will be like bread for us to devour. It's the same land, same giants, same cities, but 2 completely opposite conclusions.
Well, you can probably guess which report the people listened to. That negative report from the 10 spies just ripped through the camp. It was like a poison. And in an instant, the heart of an entire nation turned from faith to fear, from gratitude to grumbling. This is what they cried out. The entire camp wept all night long. Can you imagine? They actually said they wished they had died as slaves back in Egypt. They accused God of leading them all this way just to be killed. They even started talking about choosing a new leader to march them all the way back to slavery. They were completely rejecting God's promise.
In the middle of all this chaos, Joshua and Caleb just can't take it. They tear their clothes, which was a sign of deep grief and distress, and they plead with the people. Please, trust God. Remember what He can do. But the people's hearts were so hard, they wouldn't listen. Instead, they pick up stones, ready to execute the only 2 men who were speaking the truth.
You see, this wasn't just a simple mistake or a moment of weakness. The Bible calls this the sin of unbelief. And what is that? It's the stubborn, willful choice to trust our own eyes, our own fears, and our own strength more than we trust God's proven promise and His incredible power. It's basically saying, my way, my perception, that's more real than what God says. Just as the mob is about to kill Joshua and Caleb, God Himself shows up. Suddenly, the brilliant, shining glory of the Lord appears at the tabernacle for everyone to see. And God says to Moses, how long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me after everything I've done for them?
And once again, Moses steps in to intercede. But he does something really smart here. He doesn't make excuses for the people's terrible behavior. No, instead he appeals to God's own character. He basically quotes God back to himself, reminding him of what he said. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving sin. But he also includes the other side of God's nature, yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He's appealing to both God's mercy and his justice.
And so God
delivers his verdict. And it is absolutely heartbreaking. He declares that not one person from that generation who saw his glory in Egypt, who walked through the Red Sea, who ate the manna, not one of them would ever be allowed to enter the Promised Land.
The punishment had this stunning, tragic symmetry to it. They spent 40 days spying out the land in fear and unbelief. So they would spend 40 years wandering in the wilderness, a year for every single day of doubt. This wasn't just a random punishment. It was the direct consequence of them choosing their own way over God's.
You know, this whole story pushes us to ask a much bigger question. It's a question about the very nature of God. How can God be perfectly just, a God who must punish sin, and at the same time be perfectly loving and merciful? This story from the wilderness actually points us to the ultimate climax, the ultimate answer.
So, here it is, the central question of everything. Where in all of time and space can those two things come together? Where does God's perfect, awesome justice meet his overwhelming, perfect love without either one being compromised?
There's only one answer: the cross of Jesus Christ. That is the one single point in all of human history where God's justice and God's love are both perfectly, completely, and simultaneously satisfied. Let's just break that down. On one side, you have God's awesome justice. His holiness is so perfect, so pure, that sin, that rebellion we saw with Israel, can't just be swept under the rug. It has to be punished, and the punishment is death. As Moses reminded him, he does not leave the guilty unpunished. But on the other side, you have his abounding love. He loves us so much that he provides the sacrifice himself to pay that penalty. And this is where we see the sheer awe and terror of God's majesty. The cross isn't just a sweet story about love. It's a terrifying picture of God's perfect justice. It shows us what our sin, our rebellion, actually deserves. The agony of a Roman scourging, the suffering of being nailed to a cross, and the unimaginable spiritual weight of every sin from all of humanity being placed on his one perfect, sinless Son. That is the price that God's holiness requires.
And if we look back at the wilderness, we see this principle played out immediately. The judgment was swift and precise. The 10 spies who spread the bad report, they died instantly from a plague. The generation that rebelled, they got what they cried out for. They died in the wilderness, never seeing the land. But Caleb and Joshua, the two who followed God wholeheartedly, the promise was kept for them. They got to go in.
Now, it's really easy for us to sit back and judge those Israelites, isn't it? But the truth is, this story is meant to be a mirror. It forces us to take a hard look at our own lives and the choices we're making every single day.
Because we all face our own giants, don't we? Those challenges that just seem impossible. Those fortified cities of fear and anxiety. It could be a financial crisis, a broken relationship, a scary diagnosis, a personal failure. In those moments, the question is, which report are you going to believe? The one that your fear is screaming at you, or the one that God has promised you?
Because this is God's ultimate promise. This is the promise that the cross made possible. It's the final answer to all of our rebellion, all of our fear. He provided the way, He took the punishment, and He offers us eternal life, not because we're strong enough to defeat the giants, but simply if we believe in the Son He sent.
So, in the end, it all boils down to this one question. It's the exact same question Israel faced at the edge of Canaan. Will you choose your own way, trusting what you can see and what you can do, or will you choose His way, the way of faith? Liking, subscribing, and commenting is a great encouragement for producing the next video.